So Hasan Piker was stopped by police in China, and he's once again being a dumbass. Let's talk about it. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the show. So Hasan Piker, shocker of Naya, is now touring around China. And it's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. He could do that. Streamers are doing it all the time. It's just now you are a cog in the Chinese propaganda machine. And it's not me saying it as a biased American, because I'm 100% a biased American. Now, Hasan is very critical of the United States, which is good. He should be. Everybody should be critical of their government. Everybody should have the right to be critical of their government. The funny thing to me is that Hasan Piker is a socialist that is very critical of the United States while living in a $2.7 million mansion in Los Angeles, and then flies to a country like China to do live streams to show that the country's not as bad as the American propaganda machine is saying, all while going on Chinese state media like the CGTN outlet, which is pure Chinese propaganda, and do an interview with a Chinese state-owned influencer, talk about how Americans have the wrong perception of China, which, okay, yeah, obviously, we are two countries that don't really have that great of relations. Obviously, each country is going to give a little bit of propaganda about each other. The difference is, I can live here and criticize my government. I can say something like, fuck Trump, and I won't be arrested for it. You are just in China holding up a AI image of you blended with Mao Zedong in Tiananmen Square, no less, and you were stopped by police because of it. Yes, you weren't detained or arrested because they're aware of your presence in China and that you are actually a cog in the machine to make them look as good as possible to people in the West so that the younger generation softens up to what will eventually be China becoming the global power, which we are on track for that to happen. Hasan, it is completely okay for you to criticize the country that you live in that has given you such privilege and the privilege to be able to criticize them. It is so much richer for you to go to a communist authoritarian regime that arrests people for speaking out. Hell, they have their own version of TikTok that doesn't show all of the brain rot that the American version shows and the rest of the world shows. TikTok is literally used by the CCP, even though they don't own it. If you have any concept of how government and free markets work there, it's that they allow free markets to exist so they get the benefit of the raw economic power that capitalism brings, but the country controls that heavily because TikTok's parent company is ByteDance, which is a Chinese company. And if it's a company that operates in China, it's owned by the CCP. And they'll feed you this bullshit that's like 60% owned by the people and it's like owned by foreign people. No, it is an arm of propaganda. For their own country, all it does is tell them how great China is. China's version of TikTok is an education platform. While for the rest of the world, they've specifically engineered it so that it just shoots out brain rot shit, colonizing their mental real estate while pumping out information, true or not, that causes them to hate their own country. It's a weapon, and that's fine. I don't think TikTok should be banned in the US, but that's how it's used, and if you're aware of that, then it's fine. The problem is most people in other countries aren't aware of that, or they're willfully ignorant of it, because it's used to sow mistrust, hatred, division. It's a weapon. And I would be lying to say the US and other world powers don't do this. Sure, there's the battlefield with no man's lands and trenches and guns and drones and bombs and nukes, but there is a digital battlefield that's at play right now. And I would say we do the same thing to China with our social media, but we can't because they banned almost all of American social media. Literally for that reason, so that they can have control over what their people see and say, and they have no outside influence. And also, Hasan, are you just going to ignore that China is in a population decline, that they're on the cusp of a recession, that their infrastructure, like the USSR and other communist state authoritarian countries, cuts so many goddamn infrastructure safety codes, which is why buildings and bridges collapse all the fucking time? Just gonna ignore that during COVID, there were people going door to door just shooting people who were infected? Good luck finding any of those videos on the internet. They were big when COVID first started, but it's gonna be very hard to find them now. They're doing very well at scrubbing them. Are we just going to also ignore their one-child policy? Are we just going to also ignore the fact that they're basically financially colonizing Africa? Even if it's just a civilian boat, all of their boats have to meet military-grade standards. So if it's just a ferry that's supposed to bring cars to go across rivers or bays and shit, all of those ferries have to be built to the standard to hold tanks. Now, I want you to think why they would want to do that. This is this little country called Taiwan. And right now, a lot of the world's powers are trying to build a naval blockade in the China Sea to protect Taiwan. And that window for China to invade Taiwan is getting narrower and narrower, meaning the likelihood of them invading is closing in. Also, Hasan, you being very outspoken for Palestine, which is good. What's going on there is a genocide. Are you not going to talk about all of the Muslims that they are killing and forcing to convert in concentration camps in China? Are you just not going to bring that up? Where they're rounding them all up, putting them into camps to re-educate them, to abandon Islam or die. And many of them are put in through forced labor in factories. But no, you're not going to hear all this because China says none of this happens. Hasan, you are Antifa. You're very anti-authoritarian. You just went to the most powerful authoritarian country on the fucking planet. You want to talk about the ghost cities, which are one of the many things that are artificially making China's economy looking really strong? Oh, and you want to talk about the forced labor in China to build these cities? They go to all these poor countries and they tell people, here, come to China and we'll give you a job. They get there, they revoke their visa and passports so they can't leave, and now they're just slaves. You want to talk about any of that? But again, no, because China says none of this happens. You can't trust an iota of data or information that comes out of China about their GDP, about anything. They're full state control, they're authoritarian, everything's a fucking lie. And yeah, America's not perfect. We lie about a lot of shit. We've done a lot of terrible shit to other countries and people around the world. But the fact that I could sit here and say things like fuck Trump, George Bush did 9/11, Operation Northwoods, the Liberty Incident, Ruby Ridge, Waco, MK Ultra, and the possibility that the CIA is behind a lot of the serial killers and school shooters. The fucking fact I can say all that and not be imprisoned should be, you would think, indicative enough to show you what's what. And Hasan did say, look, me going to China to say, hey, Americans have a misconception of what China is like, and that's not me endorsing their government. Yeah, that's a point. But you don't fucking criticize them. And again, the US is deserving of so much criticism. Our government is corrupt, it is shady, and we've done some terrible things. Not some, a lot. However, I have the freedom to talk about it. And of course, you have cases like Edward Snowden, who he didn't have the freedom to talk about it because he literally committed treason by leaking documents that the government didn't want to leak. Even though I'm fully in support of him and those documents should have been released, it's still, in a legal sense, treason. That's when they can get him on that. They legally cannot do anything to me for saying anything I'm saying. Are there agencies within the United States government that makes people disappear that they don't want to be talking? Yes, that happens. That happens in every country, even the Nordic ones. Because corruption, it's human. It's going to happen in any government, in any society. However, you can objectively look at countries and know which ones are more free than others. And there is the true fact that if the general public knows about it, odds are the government doesn't care if the people know about it. Yes, America's not perfect. Yes, it's horrifically corrupt in so many goddamn ways. America is nowhere near as authoritarian as people here would like to believe it to be. Does it have authoritarian tendencies? Yes, again, every country does. And yeah, there's a lot of economic inequality. There's a lot of social inequality. Again, everywhere. But there's a reason you still live in your $2.7 million mansion in LA. Because you know, Hasan. You know. There's a reason why you're here and not in any of the other 200 and something odd countries. Why aren't you in any of the Nordic countries? They're more socialist. Why aren't you living in China? Why don't you go live in Russia? Why don't you go live anywhere in Africa? Why don't you go live in Australia? Why don't you go live in Japan? Because you know, you have it very fucking nice here. And you have built your entire following off of criticizing America and the Western world. All while America and the Western world pays you handsomely to do it. Go live in China and criticize their government like you do here. See how far you make it. Go live in Turkey and criticize their government like you do here. See how far you make it. Go even live in the UK and tweet half the shit that you tweet. Because odds are something you said there is going to be hate speech and you'll get a longer prison sentence than a guy that butchered a bunch of people on a train. You say all the time that you hate America and this country and that we deserve 9/11. Now, I'm an American. And as an American, I fucking love 9/11 jokes. However, saying something like that is another level of disgusting. Because you, Hasan, struggle to point out the differences that the government isn't representative of the people, the country, or the culture. I'm very critical and I don't really love my government. But I love my country, and I love the people of my country. Which you could conveniently do for China, but you failed to do it here. The country that has given you obscene wealth and fame. Hasan, because of this country, more people alive today know your name than more people alive in Genghis Khan's day knew his name. And you are eating better than he ever did. And that goes for many kings and emperors in history. You are a spoiled fucking brat, suckling on the tit of a system you claim to hate. And Hasan, I don't hate you. I just think you're a fucking jackass. You're a self-proclaimed socialist that lives like a capitalist. You're Antifa, but you turn a blind eye to certain authoritarian regimes when it's convenient for you. You're pro-Palestine, but you turn a blind eye to the plight of Muslims in other countries when it conveniences you. You're a wealthy Nepo baby that cries to eat the rich. I could keep giving a ton of examples of this, but Hasan, you're a bigger hypocrite than the United States government. And I've gone over my time and I've kind of made a lot of points that I wanted to make, even though there's so much more I could say, and probably do it another time when an opportunity arises. So sorry for the rant, sorry if it sounded like lecturing. Didn't make a whole lot of jokes here because the joke in itself is just Hasan Piker's entire existence. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Love you guys.